if you work in film, if you work with CNM, I teach over there. All kinds of broadcasting. We do mixed reality film and do a little bit of VR here as well. So that's why we're here to talk today. I do have my presentations a little bit like my classes, so I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I hope you guys have some questions too. Big part of this is going to be a discussion. So we're going to hop right into it. First start, essentially, of a introduction to getting started with virtual reality. And so I just wanted to go over a very brief history of VR. Otherwise, we'd be here for about two or 3 hours. So before we get started, I wanted to ask, how familiar is everybody with VR, AR, those types of technologies here? A little bit.
Did you have a PowerPoint?
Oh, is it not? It was just up.
Sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I saw that you had a PowerPoint.
Yeah, no, we can see it on Zoom. And if anyone has issues hearing me on Zoom, please let me know. I have the chat open, so I will see that. So you can respond that way too. Oh, and let's bring this back up. That's okay. I'll talk a little bit about what we have for the demo while we wait. So I have two different kinds of VR gear here for you today. We've got Google Cardboard that we can all check out. That works really well with anybody's smartphone. Everything will be sanitized in between each person. And you can, sanitize the Google Cardboard as well. It holds up pretty well. So anyone that has a gyroscope in their phone, if you are able to move around, say if you see any of those 360 videos, it's a quick test. We'll hop on YouTube, and there's some wonderful 360 videos that you can check out on your phone. If it moves, we can put it in there. If it doesn't, we'll use someone else's phone. Mine works just fine, so we can go ahead and do that there. There are plenty of horror-themed videos there as well, so if we want to do that and stick with our October theme, we can. It does get a little creepy because there are actually horror films that have started using virtual reality for their trailers. There's some really good ones out there, and it gets really creepy. We also have an Oculus Rift Touch here today. That is set up with some horror games for our October, Halloween theme as well. And so this is actually full room scale tracking, what we have here. Well, room scale, we have a specific space since we have all the tables. You can move anywhere within this portion. What we have here, though, we'll have two different experiences that you can check out. One will be, one will be a seated experience. So if you choose that one, we'll get a chair for you, so you can really feel like you're actually sitting. And, fair warning, again, they are a little scary. And the standing experience puts you right into the middle of the action. I do think everyone should keep it clear. I've seen many people fall straight to the floor, so we're going to get your hearts racing today. But excellent. So what a lot of people don't know is that with virtual reality, the idea's been around for a really long time. We've seen this in art and fiction and moving through. So just want to put some things up here. Anybody know what this is?
Like a viewfinder.
Yeah.
The little viewfinder. That's what it makes me think of.
Ain't that fun? So, yeah, this is called a stereoscope. If anyone ever went to an art school or took an art history class, you might have seen it. So this is an old way that they would actually take two pictures. So we can consider this kind of like the start of the head-mounted display for virtual reality headsets, right? And so they would take two pictures and offset them just slightly. So there's a little bit more space on one end of the photo than a little on the other. So when they come together, you actually focus on the middle point once you hold it up. And your eyes focus to give you a three-dimensional image. So this is actually the film stereoscope, and this was invented in 1861. Wow. So, also, something you might be familiar with, and we'll just stand over here because it's a little easier. Pygmalion spectacles. How many people have had to read that or wanted to read it? Yes, many a story has been inspired by this book. It is available in the public domain. You can actually just go download a PDF of it if you're interested and read read it right away. It's great to share with students. But this was written in 1935. So, in this story, the main character, Danberg, meets with an elfin professor, Albert Ludwig, who invents a pair of goggles which enabled a movie that gives one sight and sound, taste and smell, and touch. You are in the story, you speak to the shadows or characters, and they reply. And it says, instead of being on the screen, the story is all about you. You are in it. You're involved. And so this is often said to be one of the first works of fiction where we have imagined something such as virtual reality well before it, could actually be completed technologically. Moving on, I'm sure most of you should be familiar with Tron, right? So, just going along in the timeline here, Tron was in 1982, and yeah, we have remakes, but the original was 82.
How long ago? 1982. 39 years. 39 years. Throwing it out there.
That's okay. It just gets worse as time goes on. So, with Tron, we have a hacker that gets pulled into a virtual world and is going through all of this and meeting these characters and dealing with hostile artificial intelligence, right? Tron inspired a huge wave, and actually in the 80s as well, we're just about to get to that, but NASA had picked back up on virtual reality, but little known fact, they'd actually been working on it since the 1950s. You'll actually, if you go to the NASA website, you can see they had a huge room, giant setup. This thing was ridiculously heavy. I think it was like 250 pounds. About this big, you'd have to walk from one end to the other. It's hooked up along the wall. And they actually have a brief history of their dealings with virtual reality on the NASA website for free and to access. So, and they are working on something right now that if you have an Oculus, that you can go download that for free and experience one of their shuttles in VR and go, gauge the scale of it and go inside and check it out. Right, but Tron inspired a wave of many other types of media. That's very pixelated. Sorry. It is a Twilight Zone episode, so forgive me. So this was in 1985. This was an episode of the Twilight Zone called Dreams for Sale. And this is often one we show to a lot of early virtual reality students because it talks about ethics and thinking about your user and getting a little confused about that line between the virtual and the actual experience. As we're watching throughout the episode, we actually start to see that the main character we're following is having some sort of glitch and error. So they keep repeating their dream that they've had for sale and going back and forth between what they think is reality and then what they're getting confused with what reality might be. But then as you continue through this episode, you start to wonder by the end of it, which one is actually real? Which is usually most of the problem with a lot of virtual reality, right? This is something we have to think about now actually because children, especially under 12, have actually started to think that they have been to particular field trips by taking these Google Cardboard virtual field trips to places like Paris and Rome, and they have these false memories now that they've actually been there because it's so realistic. And so we've done a great job improving the technology, but we're still kind of figuring out the effects it's having on their brains. But the wonderful thing is they can use it for about 5 to 10 minutes at a time. That time goes up throughout the ages. So, teenagers, there's like maybe an hour, take a break, especially because you can get motion sickness for a little bit. Anyone who does good reality development knows that you have to try to have the highest refresh rate possible on your headset to try to reduce that possibility of motion sickness. So making sure you have good equipment, you have a good computer, and that your connection is impeccable, because if it gets pretty laggy, then you're going to get sick very quickly, and most people don't carry Dramamine with them. So. Okay. How many of you are familiar with the Viewmaster? Should be all of us, right? So this is the version that was most popular in 1962, actually, and we saw this continued on well through the 90s. It wasn't until about the early 2000s that it started to taper off. But the Viewmaster itself was actually created in 1939 and was originally used, right? virtual interface environment workstation that they have. So this is one of the things they were trying to work with to try to improve their workplace processes. And this was in 1990. So this was kind of the culmination of a lot of their work. And they took a break for a little while there, but they are back in the thick of it. So we've seen that as we continuously move forward, we are using virtual technology in the workforce as well. Most of the major grocery store chains are actually training their drivers through virtual reality, which is very interesting. We have a lot of mixed experiences where we have virtual reality and physical objects for police officers as well for their training that's going on. Same with firefighters. Yes. So
And the military.
exactly. The military's been doing it for a lot longer. They have much more improved features for what they're doing.
What are they doing with the firefighters?
It's actually, my husband's a firefighter, and it just cuts down their exposure because they can basically see the outline of the human body, they can see the outline of walls and navigate, the dark spaces a lot quicker.
Oh,
Are
They
they
don't have the
using,
equipment here yet. But
Are they using mixed reality so they can see both?
I believe in some
virtual-
places, AFD doesn't have that yet.
Uh-huh.
But like San Francisco Fire Department, I believe they did a show on it, has it, and it's fantastic.
Because they don't actually have to be in a smoked room.
Well, you
everything.
still have to go in, but you can get in and out because,
Ah.
it's basically pitch black when those guys go in. So, it would be, you'll have to Google it. It's
Yeah.
crazy, but you can literally see somebody out.
Oh yeah, the mixed reality portion is one of those you have to try it to understand it kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can put up on a screen that is going to help you understand. I say this having worked with Microsoft when they were doing their HoloLens exhibit. I went to Cornish College of the Arts and they displayed their first gallery, their first artistic gallery with our school. So we got to play with those, pretty great experience. But it's really strange. Your field of view is much smaller than you think, but what you see looks like you're just looking at reality. And so it's really interesting because if you start filming people, one of the examples of that gallery experience was we had dance and theater majors that had recorded on 360 cameras over at the Microsoft headquarters. And so there was a ballerina, someone who actually did ballet, and they've been recorded on top of a physical music box. So if you don't have the headset on, you just see the music box. But you put on the headset, and it literally looks like this student just about that big.
Wow.
And you can even get up really close and see detail. You can see the little frills on the skirt. It's pretty mind-blowing. Unfortunately, that's one of those you have to put it on to really experience the impact. Mixed reality is a little like that. But for the firefighters, for virtual reality, we do have some additional training as well. HTC, with their Vive process, has actually come out with these wonderful trackers, which we'll talk a little bit more about, where they have, it's mostly a game, but they have incorporated it into firefighting training, where they take a prop fire hose and they are hooking up the virtual tracker to the end of the hose. So there's no real water, but between dealing with haptic feedback, vibration control, and people manipulating it in the physical space, they can try to mimic a little bit more about how to manipulate the fire hose and where to start to put out the fires while they have the headset on. Because when they pull the trigger, it activates in the virtual world to turn the hose on. Yes. Right. Any further questions or comments about that before we move on? Double checking the chat here. Make sure we haven't missed anybody. Okay. Wonderful. Great. So as we've gone through, we have a Google Cardboard here, an early version of the Oculus. We've continued to develop on these, work through the early Oculus. My God, made people ridiculously sick. But it was one of the most impressive systems that was out there at the time. And they made huge leaps and bounds, especially in affordability. So they are a big portion of why it's so popular among gamers, especially recently, as well as YouTubers. Really getting a hold of these devices and wanting to try it out, wanting to try virtual reality gaming. So that leads us where we are today with our more advanced systems. So we talked a little bit about it, and I'm really glad it came up. So I want to talk about different term definitions. So we have VR, AR, MR, and XR. Virtual reality is the one that we're most familiar with, right? We're all thinking of the head-mounted display, have it available. We think sometimes with sensors, sometimes without. We have little tracking base stations here for live. So this is going to be anything with a head-mounted display that is trying to pull you into a full virtual immersion, hence virtual reality. So virtual experiences within a contained headset. Augmented reality. We see this all the time. Most notably, Pokemon Go, which everyone went crazy for, and Instagram filters. Right? So augmented reality is great. We can put this over a ridiculous amount of things. Most often was most often developed with Unreal Engine or Unity. But now, because of the popularity with filters, actually, more and more people want to learn how to create these things for themselves. So we have all kinds of programs popping up here and there. I believe Spark AR is another one that you can use that specifically is just for AR filters. Vuforia is another example that we can use as well. And I do have an example actually on the phone. We'll do that during the demo, but that you'll be able to see if you use Vuforia mixed with Unreal Engine. The example I have is a 3D object attached to a photo. So when you have your phone showing, at the photograph, you'll see that 3D object appear and have representation. So this is a great one to start for students because you can take a few hours and all of the students can have pre-made assets and get them attached to photographs within that one class. So this is something that's very easily accessible, that can work really well for businesses. I know actually Rod over at C&M was working on how to help improve the zoo experience here with that and wayfinding. So a lot of wonderful ways we can implement augmented reality.
Hey, Melanie.
Yes.
Melanie, I had a flashback to Star Trek when you were talking about this.
Yes.
And did you, Jessica, remember the older days, the newer Star Treks where they would go right in
Picard.
virtual reality
Holodeck.
Holodeck.
Yeah.
They're holodecks.
I was totally thinking it the whole time. I was like, that's my question, Melanie.
Right?
Okay, thank you. I thought everyone was just gonna be like, I can't believe you said that.
No,
Like,
that's
I was
great.
thinking about, like, those
It's
holodecks, right? And they thought they were in real scenarios.
There's some wonderful companies that are trying to do some things towards that end. Part of what they have to do with that is room mapping, right? So we have to have enough scanning and video or images that we can really try to get a good comprehension of a room, which is really great because we used to have to do that with really specialty equipment that, very expensive, lugging around. You'd have to do the whole building. It would take forever. Composite photos, put it together, and it didn't look that great, right? Now, there's a lot of programs that you can do it on your phone. IKEA has a wonderful app that you can all download to display furniture in your home.
Wow.
Oh, don't tell anybody that.
Right? That's until after
You didn't hear that, Michael.
But it's great. It allows you to change color and to see different sizes, different types of furniture that you have in your room. But the biggest part that's really innovative about the IKEA app is that they do an excellent job of scanning your room to check for proportions. So you can have a much better representation of what that furniture will look like in that space. Yes.
I just finished a project with a company that sells blinds, like this kind of decor, and we actually helped them build a catalog of their products with this augmented reality piece. And it actually detects the corners of the windows. You can walk up on them and see the fabric close up, and you can turn to the side and see how wide the slats are. And it's pretty cool. So getting to work with that team was really awesome.
What's gonna happen to home decorators though?
Well, it's no accounting for taste, right?
Yeah.
So we can look at it all we want.
They actually created this
Very good
sales
answer.
and decorated people. So this is not direct for the customer. This is actually for their sales team, so they can go and visit their customer and say, look at our products in your home, and now buy it.
And that's a a really great point though, because a lot of usage, practical usage really, for augmented reality and virtual reality, even mixed reality, has been in very specialized professions. And so it works really well in the sales force, but we're not necessarily seeing a lot to the consumer yet, which is why we see a lot of VR related to gaming. And same with, we're starting to see virtual reality films. There's finally been some virtual reality film festivals going on, which is absolutely wonderful. You got to split the line between. Huh?
What does that mean?
Oh, so there's a variety of different things there, but I'm going to put a pin in that because we will talk about it a little bit later. And I'll get a little
All
too
I know
excited.
is my teenagers are like, are you gonna come and play tonight? And so like she pulls her brother in and they're like in there and they're doing like on their phones and that's all virtual reality, right?
Well-
When they're gaming together. I don't know.
I mean, it's
Or is it
virtual
just
meeting. It's definitely virtual meeting. One wonderful thing actually with the Oculus is that there's an application that you can use, and it's actually on most reality headsets, I believe, called Big Screen. And I absolutely love this
I
one.
use it.
Yeah, because you can
Yeah.
mimic sitting in a movie theater.
I do it, and then my brother up in Colorado and I will watch movies together.
No.
Yes, and you can have multiple people join in if they have a
He has
headset,
an Oculus.
so you can have a virtual movie night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We throw popcorn at each other and.
Yeah, you can take selfies, and somehow I still manage to have my avatar blink. Well, I don't know how it happens, but I take bad selfies even in the virtual space. Oh yeah, they blink. I'm like, of course during the screenshot, but it's like. But they have a variety of different theater options, which is really great, and it's so comfortable. And I have to say, I reserved watching Doctor Strange so I could watch it on the VR headset in the fake movie theater. And I have to say, I have a reclining desk chair and everything else, so I got all comfortable and microfiber blankets, popcorn. It was probably one of the best movies to watch in virtual reality. So,
I'm sure I can Google this right now, but I don't want to, be on my phone too much. How much is an Oculus? What is the price range?
They're about $300, $400.
it depends on the type. They have a wide range of systems that you have. They have a standalone now. It's not very powerful. That's a big part of it, is that if you want the really nice, powerful systems, they will be on the spend year end and they will be required to be hooked to a computer. Yes. But the smaller systems are actually really great for the people who are wanting to get it for their kids, mostly teenagers, because you can play a lot of games on them and they download directly to the pack, so to the headset. So those are much cheaper. It is connected all through Facebook now. Facebook bought out Oculus. So there is a little bit more tracking information there, so you have to be okay with that. One thing is that, there's a lot of targeted advertisements with it, so that's one thing to think about. The HTC Vive is another great one, but that's more so, I would say, for developers. And I'll put another pin in that because we're going to talk a little bit more about specific headsets. But yes, so there's a lot that you can get, but we'll talk about price range. Any other questions before we move on? Check the chat again really quick, see if we have any others. Great. Okay, mixed reality. Apparently forgot the animations on this one. That's okay. So mixed reality, we're talking again. This is where you actually will have an overlay of your current reality system. And augmented reality, we're generally looking at it through a screen. So mixed reality, the goal is to try to have something that we can wear rather than having to hold through our phones or a tablet that we can then also use to interact with. So a lot of what we're looking for is, as you can see in this GIF here through the Microsoft HoloLens presentation, is touch gestures. And we've come really far with doing a lot of this. There's some really cool technology out there right now. HoloLens does a wonderful job with their gestures. And when you're developing, they actually have a library of accepted gestures and what they do. So as you go through, they have a wonderful walkthrough on the HoloLens itself, walking you through these gestures, what they do, what they can do, what people will be used to using them for, and then also you can actually program them to do whatever you need to within your own software. So, reprogrammable macros with your hands. And so most often we're seeing the HoloLens, it's very spendy. It's near the $3,000 per headset range. You can get a little bit of a deal if you're doing it for a company. But we are mostly seeing this in engineering and in medical schools. It's been a wonderful application in medical schools because we can go through different layers of the human body and zoom and however you need. But we're also seeing some of this in surgery as well. So not quite there for full application, but we already have fully remote surgery options through use of robots, and the surgeon will be off, in the corner, maneuvering the controls as best as they can, which is really wonderful. They have amazing control over this. So they can get those really fine precision surgeries done where they wouldn't necessarily be able to with their hands because there's not the space. So they're trying to combine a lot of this technology together. Any questions on the mixed reality before we continue? Great. So if you hear the term XR, we don't have a slide for that, but XR is generally extended reality. So it's the umbrella term that can fit all of this and what doesn't quite fit in there as well into there while we're still figuring everything out, because this is still a fairly new field. We're all trying to figure out what the best ways are to design for it. And it's kind of like a new tech wild west. Everybody thinks they've got the best way, and then someone does something, you're like, why would you use it that way? And we have to start again. I will tell you, one of the very first things for all developers to know is that if you have something you can pick up, someone will throw it, guaranteed, every single time. Even if they shouldn't, it's just a curiosity. If it's a mug, if it's anything, they're gonna grab it and see how far they can chuck it. And that's one of the first things they'll want to do too, especially if they have the controllers, is can I pick this up? Does this vibrate? Does it have a feedback? Can I tell that I've picked this up? Yes. So the interesting thing is that since you're developing for a 3D space, you have to think about how those particular behaviors are going to be, document yourself using it for the first time, other people using it for the first time, and try to think, if I do have things that I want people to pick up, but I don't want them to throw it, and it might get lost in the 3D space, and they might not necessarily be able to go pick it up because we're limited, right? Then how do we get that back if somebody does decide they want to do that? So we can limit things through restraints on a grid system, right? So I actually created something where you can, pick up planets and toss them up in the air because I think people want to, but they fall down based on their density. So you can see the different densities of planets without having to know exactly what they are. So my solution for that, because they rolled off into space for the first few tests, right, without coming back, the first option was to try to work through that and just have a set position for them to return to. That was okay, but it did take time because you had to wait for it to stop rolling. And since it's a planet, it goes a while, So finally, there's an option, especially within Unreal Engine, that you can restrict to a specific axis. So people can pull it off, where it's little resting spaces. They can move it between both hands and take a look at it, and they can toss it up, but it will be restricted to a singular vertical axis. So that way, if they throw it, it just pops right back and will slowly fall as intended. So when we're having to develop and we're having to program, we are having to think about things in a much wider scale. Yeah. And you really have to brush up on your physics. You don't need to know it really well because thankfully, you can play with the numbers in there and see what it does. It's very responsive for a lot of the game engines, but if you aren't using a game engine, you're definitely going to need to know your numbers.
Is video games mixed reality or augmented reality?
So for video games, it depends on the video game. Pokemon Go is augmented reality, which is also a video game. For a lot of the things that you'll see on a headset, that's going to be virtual reality. I'm not sure actually if there are there are a couple games actually. I am remembering. There are a few games on the HoloLens that would be mixed reality, which is really, really cool. It scans your living room or wherever you're playing, and it checks for all of the physical objects, tables, floors, walls, couches, and then it spawns little robotic creatures, and you have to shoot them down. And so it actually utilizes your own living space. Whoa. To have a little virtual video. It's I think honestly one of the best implementations of the games. Also, I don't know if any of you remember Microsoft Bob from like Windows 95, but there's a little dog have it back in the HoloLens. So it was the first beginnings of really virtual personal assistants before anyone to.
Oh, God.
Not as far as I know. No flipping. But
So now, like when my teenagers are like, "Hey, do you want to play?" and so they're playing video games against each other, and they're all in the same space but on their own phones.
So that's just a virtual space. So but it depends because there are, games that they can play multiplayer with a
And they're
headset.
not doing the headsets; they're
Yeah.
just doing that.
They're gonna be
Let's
kitchen
play.
start going.
But they will not go and brush their teeth, or they will not stop when I'm like, "I need to talk to you for a minute." No.
Well, that's because a lot of video games have moved over into, less progressive and more open world. So they can explore, they can do things without having time constraints. But there's no pause for a lot of games now.
And they're playing against each other or playing against other people that they're now
Yes, so
learning
the
not to
competitive
like,
aspect
or
and
where
no
they're
pausing.
killing each other.
Before,
They're all in my kitchen. Renee said, "No." I'm
previously,
chilling in my house.
previously for video games, they used to have an option, especially for competitive ones, where it would, someone could request to pause, and it would kind of freeze for a second, and everybody could say, okay, we'll go ahead and pause it, and we'll wait, and because everyone always had to go do something. Early 2000s, everyone needed to pause, and be like, I'm sorry, my mom needs me to go do the dishes.
I know, I'm sorry.
So hard
But
to get
they
them to go
removed
do
that
dishes
feature.
now.
Yeah, because they removed that feature from
Now
a lot
they
of
can
games.
pause.
So-
They're like, "I'm about to die and I can't die."
Exactly. So, sorry. Minecraft, it depends. If they're playing creative mode, they can just go at any point. I don't care what they tell you. They can just, it's a safe space. Creative mode should have no monsters, depending on how they've done it. They're just building, so they can step away. And
But I
there's
mean,
not
that,
really a
that,
balance.
they still get it done, that's virtual.
So it's in a virtual space, but we wouldn't classify it under any of the realities because when we're talking about these mixed realities, extended realities, it's how we can try to have these experiences more immersive and involved and more physical format mixed with a virtual space. Yes.
Sorry, I know, I think we're probably like taking. it
Oh
down
no,
to,
I
like, our
designed
kids,
this
and
for
you're
this
like
to happen.
medical, engineering, like the high level.
But we all know it with video games, right? So we're going to have questions and discuss based on what we see the most use of it, which is fascinating because people want to see more than just video games with it. But, the industries aren't necessarily ready to adapt and it's very expensive and everyone's still trying to figure out how to make stuff for it. And then the people who do learn about it go and make video games. So it's kind of a problem.
So that's a really interesting point. And I'm sure you'll probably get to that as far as like the industry.
Yes, I don't have a slide for that, but I will address that right now for you. If we continue looking at statistics throughout the last few years, the most popular things that it's very interesting. It's what we want to see as consumers, what we expect to see, and what's actually there. So what a lot of people are wanting to see, of course, are more video games because that's what they know is there. They do want to see more movies because they're like, well, movies are on a screen. Can't you make movies, in a virtual reality environment? So they're making the connection because they can see other opportunities that already exist. But anyone who actually, is really involved in different types of work, we are the ones, teachers, people in the tech industry, that we want to see this applied to more entrepreneurial ventures and going through business. And mostly, though, we're seeing a lot of breakthrough in trying to do this with film. And that is not only the most desired, but the most expected coming up to be predicted in the next few years. Yeah.
What about training, though? I mean, when we think about training people to do different jobs, I mean, to me, just the firefighters, but it could be a lot of different things, right?
Yeah, Walmart uses it for their truck drivers.
Yeah.
And they've actually, this is statistics I had pulled a few years ago, but they're probably still fairly accurate. I was having an educational system, so an educational experience based on different models of learning.
Right.
So if you are, a listener, if you read, if you are more of a kinesthetic person, so different ways to experience that and different options to explore it at your own pace. So during that research and that study, I had found that there was a lot of options for this virtual training and virtual education. And on a screen versus, in person, we're actually seeing about 78% retention for just regular computer-based training. But that number went up to about 95% with virtual reality.
Yes. And think of what has happened, right, in this past
Exactly.
2 years, right? And where that use will have some traction now, whereas before maybe not so much, right?
Exactly, because those of us who have known that this exists and we've been trying to pitch it around, everyone's like, we don't see a need for it. We don't see any uses for it. And now that we've had to, everyone's starting to say, we needed this yesterday. Why wasn't anyone investing in it? But even then, as we're going through it, more and more people are seeing these hybrid options and, seeing what we can do. And that the technology is there to actually do some really interesting things. And more people are like, well, if I can be home, why can't I be home? This is more flexible. You can deal with kids, you can deal with the pets. Poor all of them are just having issues when everyone went back to work, right? And so now that we can actually show everyone and say, that's what we were talking about all along.
So I have a question. Mixed reality, would that be, so at D&M, I know the welding department of applied technologies actually has a system where you can hold the gun in your hand, it feels just like a regular welder, but it tracks your patterns of how you would weld, how fast you weld, if you're actually too far or too close to a piece of material, like all the different things that a welder really needs to think about. Would that be considered a mixed reality because I'm holding the thing in my hand, even though they aren't actually welding?
So if it's tracking all that information, what does it do with the tracked information? Is it output into a reader? Is it?
It's output into like a welding helmet that they're wearing, so it feels like they're in that same situation.
That's really interesting. Is that at the fuse light?
No, it's at applied technology.
Oh, I love
Very
it.
cool.
Because I love welding. So.
We used to have the in-person events for convocation.
So it depends. If it's still interacting with the physical environment, then I would say it is more mixed reality. But if it's simply using the tool and it's mostly all in the headset, I would say that's more like a virtual reality experience with a controller. So think of that as a human input device.
Yeah.
But that's my personal opinion on it. It depends on what it does. And if,
Right?
and if it added more
They're using
features.
it in the trade.
Exactly.
So it's not just in high-tech jobs. They're using it in trades to translate.
And we need to
Because
go
they're not using gas, they're not like
materials.
Material.
It's not burning off chemicals that we have to worry about. You're not blowing up your eyes.
Right, that's what you're talking about with Walmart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially because then you can actually put these people in these simulated, error issues and try to work through it, figure it out where they can be in a calm environment. And so hopefully by that time they can realize that, it's like if you have a truck and you're jackknifed on the highway because there wasn't anything in the back, how are you going to handle that situation? So it has some wonderful applications. We're seeing most of it in architecture, engineering, plumbing, a lot in plumbing.
So aviation has done it for a while, right?
Oh, for a very long time.
You don't want to put a pilot in a plane and say, "I give it a go," right? So they had that, but it was very, very complex, right? They had so many screens that they had to put up there even to just do the simulation.
Well, and it's like, look at the flight simulators
Yeah.
at home now,
Yeah.
right? You can have the whole setup.
Yeah, yeah.
So absolutely, and we're seeing more of this, and I'm personally hoping we'll see a little bit more of the physical interactions, because we're having developers that are very interested in the virtual and very interested in having the tools that can get all this information, but not necessarily have a combination of both that can really try to push what we can use with it. So that's one reason why I actually like mixed reality filming, is because I think it's a great application of both. Because with mixed reality film, you have all of your virtual gear set up, and you have multiple trackers. You can have 30 trackers going through a house and have a whole green screen house and camera setup going on. So you have these trackers that are attached to virtual cameras that are in the 3D CGI environment. So that's all done already. Instead of the post-production where we have to spend all the time doing it, it's made ahead of time. And then that's ready to go through, so that when we attach that virtual camera to a physical tracker, we then attach that physical tracker to a physical camera where we are recording actors. And so you edit out the green screen in the live simulation, essentially. And so the virtual camera is tracking all of the 3D environment while your physical camera tracks the actor. And and you can actually continue to follow them through the scene and through that 3D environment at the same time.
Wow.
And so that's actually what I'm setting up for the studio to do fairly soon. So I'm very excited to see what we can do.
So, but in terms of bandwidth, as this gets more and more popular, if we start watching mixed reality movies, or even with Oculus and the gaming, that will the amount of bandwidth one needs will increase, correct?
Yes.
Do you think by a lot?
Not as much as you think, surprisingly. You can do this fairly well on decently wireless connection. I think I have a wireless card that's a little over $100, and it does pretty well for itself. Anything with the antenna to boost it a little bit is going to help. But they do suggest a wired connection because it will provide you the most consistent. Because again, if it starts lagging, it's going to make you sick.
Yeah.
So, and then the more people you have using it, if you have multiple people in a household, it's going to suck up a lot of that. So I think that kind of starts leading into that question of should the internet be a utility? So,
Should the internet what?
be a utility.
No.
So that's a pretty big debate with a lot of people. But we are seeing a lot of increased speeds too, as more and more internet providers are upping their options. So we are actually seeing a lot of possibilities. Right. Any further questions before we move on?
I just wanted to throw out, isn't it funny, like the Wii is like, I think that kind of like almost started it. And it actually wasn't too long ago, but like 10, 20 years ago, or okay, I don't know. When my kids were, it was like, play the Wii, and
Yes.
oh my gosh, it was so funny that soccer game one, like where the balls are flying at you, and then every now and then it's a cleat and you're getting hit in the head.
Well,
Sorry.
you can actually use Kinects as 360
You're
camera.
just taking me back.
So-
That was like an old fashioned.
Yeah, which on the the Kinect and the PlayStation Eye and all of that, which eventually led us to the Nintendo Switch, right? Which is just ridiculous. Which
Oh,
they have a patent for a VR headset. It's not anywhere, but you can find it online if you look. Where they have a headset where you just slide the Switch dock in there, and the controllers already have all the sensors they need. So it's essentially like Google Cardboard in a Nintendo Switch. I really hope they release that because they have the patent for it and it looks great. So we'll see. But they released the Switch Lite, so we'll see what's going on there.
and the dance parties, me and my girls used to
Yes.
have so much fun with the Wii.
And they
dance
have like the new
parties.
the circle fit thing, right?
I have
And I'd really love to see Mario Tennis because that was really fun for me too.
Because if I run virtual reality, I still. Yeah.
Well, if you have the omnidirectional treadmills, yes. Because they have treadmills that you can hook up to and stay in the virtual reality space. So, yeah, they've been around for, I think, almost 10 years now. So,
And they've done studies, actually, if you, with meditators, where if they envision themselves doing exercises, it actually does increase the strength in their muscle as if they're working out. So the mind doesn't know the difference between reality and that's why meditation is so amazing in terms of the research, because they've done a lot around this. So when you visualize things, your mind doesn't know the difference. So that's why it's easy. That's why it's so important, like meditating.
well, and virtual reality.
Meditate and exercise at the same time.
Yeah, well, if you visualize yourself doing it, like they had one person doing something with their arm, and they measured the muscle, and they found that the muscle didn't know the difference.
No.
Now I'm serious, and it was
Like
stronger.
meditate and run 5 miles?
And they imagined it.
No.
But that takes a lot of concentration and focus. to do
Yeah,
it.
I can't.
Yeah.
There's
meditate.
an Olympic runner actually. There's a lot that has gone into that. And some of that has gone into the VR
It
headset.
connects. Absolutely.
There's an Olympic runner that was in an accident, and part of her brain was damaged that allowed her to just run until she was tired, basically. And what they found from studying this person was that a lot of fatigue is mental. So because she couldn't tell, specifically for her, she couldn't tell how much time had passed. So instead of being able to see, I've been running for so long, that reality did not exist in her mind. So instead, she would just go until she was tired, and then she just couldn't run anymore.
They just came out with a research study about that runners were more successful just when they didn't concentrate on the feeling body and just look at other things.
Yes.
And they can keep running longer and
Tracking
longer.
goals, like visual goal
Yeah.
posts, basically of to this next point, to this next point. But I'll say too, there's a fairly old study, and I show this clip to my students all the time. We're actually just about to when we talk about the human brain and how we interpret signals. There's this very old psychological test that's essentially called the glove test. So you have someone put their hand by a divider, and you put a fake rubber glove out there that's filled up, and you have a tester that is using two paintbrushes. And they mimic the same pattern along the tester's hand and the rubber glove, but they can only see the rubber glove. So after a certain amount of time, the brain actually adopts the rubber glove as their hand. So they think it's their hand. So, they come across and to try to startle them, they'll like take a hammer to the rubber glove, and almost every single person freaks out because they think their hand's gonna get hurt. So it's little things like that all throughout psychology that developers are studying to try to understand how we interpret reality. And so it's pretty fascinating. I'll let you know. I develop in VR all the time. I still, if the graphics are good enough, completely forget. I went to bend down to pick something up off a chair after hours of being inside something and studying it, and I forgot I was in VR and tried to lean on the chair and almost hit the floor. So what happens to everybody because our brains adapt very quickly.
Well, that just is even more concerning, like for young people, right?
Which is why you definitely need to limit their time on it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why, especially again, 12 or younger, 5 minutes. That's it. And be very clear, what's going on. It's not real. But we can have some wonderful things to deal with this too. Actually here locally, they are using virtual reality and ketamine as well as a mixture to do guided meditations to help with PTSD symptoms in soldiers.
Yeah.
And they're having great results. So we're trying to even think about this to find even new ways to hack our brains and to help with things like this therapy, all kinds of things like that. So we already started talking about it a little bit, but we'll talk a little bit about more of the headset options that you'll more commonly see. I have the ones up here that we are used to for developers and gamers because they want the same things, right? But for if anyone is interested in hopping in, these are all fairly similar in price. We have the Oculus Rift here. Their newer version, I believe, is still around $7.99, but it comes with the sensors, the controllers, and the headset. This was actually a really great choice for a while because no one else had the controllers for a while. So they were some of the first people that you could actually use, grip objects and play with them. We also have the Valve Index in the middle here. So we have these tracking stations. So all of these work with infrared sensors, so they can track the head display and the controllers. And so this has controllers as well. I believe that price is around $5.99 because they're aiming it more towards gamers rather than developers. And we finally have the HTC Vive Cosmos Elite, which is like the biggest beast on the market right now. That is about $8.99 plus, depending on what attachments you get to it. The base is about $8.99. It's really wonderful for developers though, because it has a flip up on the head mount. So you have to put these on all the time. When you are making them on the computer, a tiny adjustment can make all the difference while you have it on. So if you want to test something while you're adjusting numbers, you can have that flip up. It makes a world of difference and saves you so much time from on, off, to just, oh, here's an adjustment, pop it back on, did it work? There you go. And these definitely require a much stronger computer. I actually have to upgrade my computer before I can get this one. And it is a little older, but it's still pretty good computer. So part of that too is that most of these computers that can run these will be, if they're pre-made, about $2,000 or so. And the headsets being just under $1,000 for everything. It's an investment, which is partially why it's difficult to get everybody in here. When I was a student, I actually had used some of my grant money to try to invest in VR development because I knew what I wanted to work in. So it was a pretty good choice, I'd say. It seems to be working in mixed reality film now. So, but it's spendy. So some people actually will get business loans to try to show that I can do this. I borrowed a headset from a friend, but I most of the common ones that you'll see right now. There's a lot of other ones that are out there. There's an open source development kit as well that you put it together yourself. All the code is available. You can check it out. That was actually being used at the MGM in Vegas for a while. They have a huge, huge warehouse. It's really fun. I did manage to get to go, but they set you up with the Army backpack and all the sensors and everything, and it's a multiplayer experience where you can actually see other people's avatars, and like you have a working gun and you're fighting zombies. So, but it's pretty trippy. You have the whole space to work through. You have a game master talking you through where the zombies are coming from. That is large scale VR that you can have up to 12 people at a time, and it's really fun. So we're hoping to see more of that, but that setup alone is about, I would say, on a cheap end, about $34,000 to start. So it gets very spendy very quickly. The more you start adding in these stations, the more expensive it gets, and then the more computer power that you're going to need, because you have so much information that's going through all of this. But, any questions before we move on from the available?
Which one? PlayStation has something. Is that
Yes.
Oculus?
They actually have their
They
own.
have their
So
own? Okay.
yes, and it's actually a very good headset. That's part of the issue with some of these. Oculus and Vive are really well known for being able to be utilized for pretty much any PC game. And more developers are getting headset specific, which is a little concerning. But PlayStation has their PlayStation VR, which is really great. I personally really want to play the new Resident Evil on it because it looks absolutely horrifying. They have stills of that with the Google Cardboard, and that alone is like, this isn't even moving, and it's really real. So they did an amazing job with that. But yeah, PlayStation VR is actually very good. It's just a little bit more limited in what you can do because it has to run through the PlayStation system. Okay. Any other questions? Awesome. So we'll just go through a little bit faster here because we've been talking about it. But that's not what pixelated on my screen, so I'm not sure why it's doing that. But this is a still from a virtual reality film that was actually illustrated in VR as well. So they took a controller and painted all of this in VR. So they were painting everything for the animation, recorded it, and then created a film out of it. And it's beautiful and moving. It's a very short film called Dear Angelica. So if you're interested, you can download and experience it if you know someone that has a headset. And it's really touching. I would say if you've had anything a little slightly traumatic in your life going on, maybe don't watch it just because it's just very sad, very touching. It's very beautiful, but it'll get you going. So we have different types of virtual reality film. For a while, animated film was the only thing that was going to virtual reality. So we're working on that in the film industry to try to get a different variety. And so now when you hear VR film, most people think trailers. Right. That should be playing, but it's not, but that's okay. We have this on here too if you'd like to try it out. It's called Robo Recall. It's another video game. This one has amazing tracking and is something that you have to be really careful with because it's a very active game. And you can actually dodge with the headset on. So you'll start seeing a lot of people that will start trying to roll, and you really don't want to roll with headset on. It's wired for one, and you can damage it for the other. But this one gives you kind of Matrix vibes because you can dodge bullets in midair and like grab them and throw them back. So it gets really fun, but it's high paced, it's hectic, and if you're not used to it, you might get a little sick at first. So we have video games as well, testing that we have. So mixed reality filming as well. Again, if you were to see something like this, it wouldn't quite be like this, but we would have the sensors set up. You have the green screen running. You would have a camera so that you could see all of it. Someone would be sitting here as a tech that would be running the rest of the functions and all of the lighting and the animations and everything that's going on while you're also filming. It's a beast that requires quite a few people, but it's pretty fun.
Is that in the green room at West or CNM?
Oh, this was at Wright College in downtown Seattle, so they had a very tiny space, but
Do you guys have one at CNM?
yes. Matt's doing a great job with all of that. And
They
getting
have
us
lots of fun in that
introduced to it.
room, yeah.
And there's one over at West. Do you guys partner with
We do,
West?
yeah.
Their green room, which then they had to we saw it recently on a tour.
Yeah.
But then they had to reconstruct because of the HVAC and all that other stuff.
So just want to go over a brief list. There's a huge list of departments if you're working on this. If you do it by yourself, it's honestly fairly impressive just because you have to know a lot of what's going on. Speaking from experience, having done this myself, it takes months. If you're doing it alone, you have to do the programming, and even if you don't do the programming, the game engines are pretty good with visual coding, so you can do the nodules and connecting, so you don't have to do as much work. But even so, you have to do all of the lighting and the 3D modeling and any voiceover work. You have to any animations, physics, particle effects. There are so many different jobs here. So one goal of trying to get this a little bit more popularized in the area is that there's a lot of opportunity for jobs and specializations and a lot of really cool things you can do with it. If this is with mixed reality film, this is one large department with probably about 8 different departments underneath it that also have to work with the physical space equivalents. So if you are lighting something in virtual space that will also be filmed on your actor, you have to work with your lighting production team because they have to make sure that it matches. So you have to work together to try to find all those balances. If you have, like a glow that comes from like a virtual sprite or something, they're going to have to take like a little tiny LED bulb and somebody's going to have to run it on the camera so that it follows. So you can get that same glow effect on the physical actor as you would have in virtual space. So there's a lot more things you have to think about with there. But did anybody have any questions? Absolutely.
I did. So my 17-year-old who plays the games against her friend right there all night. So where does she start, or where do I say, hey, Gretchen? So she's not a natural kind of like STEM, unfortunately. Not natural STEM, but very creative and very smart. So where do I send her first?
Yeah, well, a good advocation for all of this too is thinking about STEAM rather than STEM.
Okay.
Right? Is adding
Yeah.
art in there as well.
Yeah.
Because if we have all of this, yes, we need the programmers, we need all of our technical people, but we also need the creatives to sketch out the environments, to create the 3D models, to really get invested in all of this. So that's one thing too is that people don't realize we have illustrators in film everywhere. People don't necessarily know that, but they sketch out 3D environments before they're even created. They work with the director and with the writers to try to figure out what this world's going to be. So essentially, it depends on what her interests are. And if she's more into art, I would start trying with some digital illustration, which you can start off pretty cheap. Wacom has some wonderful tablets that can start at about $50 to $70, which Wacom, yes. They're bamboo tablets. If you just look up bamboo tablets, the first thing that pops up. And they're not super great, but it's a wonderful start to get used to doing it digitally. GIMP is a free program that they could use along with that. It's basically like Photoshop, but it's free. It's open source. So you could get started with for just the price of the tablet.
Yeah.
And so as you get more familiarized with those spaces, I highly suggest finding online environments like the UX UI group that we have that's working through Discord right now, right? Having those other people that you can learn from is going to be a huge part of this because that's where all this happens. If we're being honest, if it comes to film, you can start to get to know somebody. So you get a job by finding a connection somewhere, showing them what you can do, and they try to keep you in mind for their next film. So
It's kind of the same thing, so I can reach out to Andrea.
Yeah, you gotta sign your kid up for Melody's class, is what I heard.
Yeah.
I know, that's what I was gonna say.
Starts
Okay,
again in
so
we
February, just saying.
do tailor
I was
to
gonna say,
interests.
she's really smart, but I'm not necessarily an artist per
It is a
se,
class
but
I want to take.
she's a really good gamer.
She could be in the class, I'm gonna sign you now.
Well, we actually go through from the very start of it with design basics and get everyone in on the art first, and then we start talking about strategy and strategic thinking. And so we start to worm our way in there to understand that it's not always just about the tech, it's about larger creative thinking and problem solving.
And she's really creative and really smart, and that's kind of like, I don't necessarily just want her, I mean, you know, times have changed, I'm old. I don't want her to just get a liberal arts degree, you know, I'd rather see her do something. So if she really likes the gaming she's doing now, I'd rather kind of transition her. And though, like, she's not like the science and math girl.
Yeah,
She's
the
good,
hardest
but,
part
you
is
know.
finding people that can speak to it in real world terms, because
Yeah.
I've found that, you know, having programmed quite a bit myself as well, that the issue with working with my fellow programmers tends to be that they have to be very specific, because everything does have very specific functions, but they tend to skip over the part of understanding how to get to that specific function. So starting off by trying to ease people into all of our technical jargon a little bit more is very helpful. And so to try to show real world examples and think of different ways to learn. And so there's a lot of places that are doing physical programming with like code cubes. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but they're like preloaded Python coding cubes that you can attach, you know, a really small line of code to each individual block, and then start to connect them to various robotic parts and actually create different projects with very small lines of code. So it's a nice way to try to mix both of those things. So, yeah.
I just want to let you know that stepping up because I have to go. So I apologize for leaving during your presentation.
Yeah, so it's like that combination between like the coding and the really smart. So Andrea, Gretchen and I want to come and visit you.
Yeah.
But so she's like not I keep being like, please, don't you want to do coding? Don't you want to do that? Or, you know, in my
There's so many past tech jobs that aren't just
back in the day in like MIS, you know, when I tried it and I was like, it doesn't make sense for my liberal arts brain. But like, so Gretchen and I can come and talk to you and visit with you, because
Absolutely, and bring 5 of her friends.
oh, we will. And like her best friend, he's like her gamer friend, super smart, and he's like really interested. He's done some CNN, kind of like caught up in like the automotive. He's really interested in automotive. He's really smart. He's a really smart guy.
You should bring
But I mean, like,
was waiting for you to steal that one.
what'd you say?
IoT candidate, bring him over to me.
You know, we always
Like,
actually,
seriously, because like, and he is the
Seriously, we
hardest.
got like scholarship money right now too. For New Mexico residents, most of our boot camps are free.
and
Yes.
I generally highly suggest after taking
Okay.
my boot camp that they take the IoT actually.
Sorry, I was
because it's a
talking
great
selfish.
transition.
Because like Logan is the hardest worker, and he like kind of tried welding at CNM, and
Oh yeah.
he's a
He's a good
smart
Brian.
kid. And I mean, and so is Gretchen. And so I hate Logan to start kind of going from like automotive shop to automotive shop, or from flooring to flooring. But like if you look at WIOA stuff, you know, it's like you have to basically be like homeless to
Right.
get any of that funding. Okay, so I'll talk to you about my kiddos.
Yeah, we got other
Sorry.
funding sources right now. Stop.
That's okay. We're just about wrapped up, and we've been doing the Q&A while we've been doing
It's me.
so.
You know, this.
Going over some of that just for some of the basic skills
Sorry.
in software. It's all good. Any 3D modeling program that you can find, a free one that's available is Blender. So it's a great start because it's free, very easy to use, and actually almost one of the industry standards now. So Blender is free to use, get started. You can do the 3D modeling and animation in there. You can even do 2D art now in Blender, and their 2D engine is amazing. So it's really wonderful to utilize and saves you a lot of time. Most often, though, you will be creating these in a game engine. That will be one of the most beneficial ways to do it. Most popular being Unreal Engine or Unity, which Unity, I believe, is C# and Unreal is C++. So, but they do have, here's a big difference. Unreal is pretty easy to start with, very user-friendly. They have visual coding available. Unity does not. So if you want to get started but you don't know how to code yet, you can still make things in Unreal Engine without being able to code. So big part of that. So as you go through, a lot of these communities as well, Unreal and Unity, have a lot of great documentation on how to get started and where to go through. You'll need to download software development kits and Visual Studio just to get everything running. So it's a bit of a setup, but a lot of it you can get started for free if you already have the headset. started, that's a good way to do it. And we have already been doing our Q&A, but before we move on to the demo, does anybody have any other questions?
Demo.
No.
Some goggles on Sue Ann.
No, you gotta put some goggles on Renee. She's gotta leave in 10 minutes. Come on, Renee, you've gotta be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
All right.
This is ready to go.
Go, go, go.
All right.
We also have.
I'll hurt myself. My back's sore. I'm scared.
I'm gonna.
You're not allowed this part here.
So this will it go to the Zoom? Are we gonna do things that go to Zoom, or should I end the Zoom?
I definitely can do that, but
I think Devonna's your only Zoom participant.
yeah, I think we can go ahead.
I am recording it though, so it would be cool to have.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, put the thing on Renee.
As someone who's very interested in hybrid teaching, I've been asking Devonna about this experience, and she said she could hear everybody.
Yes. All right. Yes, it is. So this game is actually called Face Your Fears. And I will let you know right now, it's based on tracking what you're doing. So if you don't look at something, it will just say that and wait until you're looking at it. I don't think I really have anything. Fighters?
I mean, I don't like them, but.
Thankfully, it's not that involved. They're pre-generated things, so that's good.
All right, let's go. Let's do it. There's no idea what.
So, we will have these props just to be ready. It should rest right on your nose and
He does.
okay, sorry. Okay, so let me teach them, if you don't mind, to position you real quick. Okay. Two doors.
All right, something in front of you.
Joanna, you're next.
No, I'm just watching.
It was red. Okay, now it's red squares.
Okay, 1 second, and I will turn it back on. It looks like it's on screen. No, you shouldn't have had it then. My 14-year-old does it all the time. There we go. That's pretty much
Fears, yeah.
Okay.
Loading.
Now it should be, here we go. This is what.
Okay.
So,
And you end up with two doors.
so the door that has, the much taller edge, that's a standing experience. The one that looks more like a cabinet door is going to be a seated experience. Okay, so just look at the standing plane.
That's all the sign?
Yes. And you just watch it. If you just keep watching, it should. There we go. Yes. Oh, so keep your eye ready. Now, there you are.
I see.
Try not to back up too far.
I see jet planes.
Yeah, just look around.
Right.
No buttons required.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, here. Oh my God. Oh, wow.
Oh,
This guy.
it's like a robot. It's trying to grab you.
Oh, he is grabbing.
Oh my God, that's your cheeky.
Oh, it's me dizzy.
Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah,
I think I can eat it in the sit down.
That's exactly what you can do. I can start doing it.
And nauseated.
turn, you can see, you can even look up now.
That is pretty cool. We can see what you see, Renee. This is very
Oh, you
cool.
guys can see what I can see?
Yeah, we can see what you see.
Oh my God, I mean, I feel a little lightheaded, but.
You're like a building, yeah, that's kind of.
Inside robot cage, so, yeah, it makes you. Yes.
Are you
That's real, that's a real board. That's a real board.
As it should.
Crawling right in.
Can I like walk in?
Right, oh, careful, careful.
You just went out of the zone, girl.
There was a ladder right there.
Someone should try the seat.
Yeah, somebody want to try it?
Oh, it's
Yeah.
it's almost on
I think it's gonna do it.
What are the fears are there?
The seated one.
You're okay with the height? I don't love it, but I'm not freaked out. I'm freaked out by your height.
It's a little more paranormal.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it.
All right, I'll
I
do
already
this.
told you, I'm super scared and like,
I'll do the seated one.
The seated one builds suspense a little bit more. That's where the chopper. This one is like,
Oh my God.
I think the robot chopper.
yeah.
Oh, the robot doctor?
Yep, and I think aliens would probably started up in UFO.
Yeah.
Yeah, it drops you just
That part,
Yeah.
Okay, that's
You're gonna do that.
that part, was scary. I wasn't ready for that part.
We were all over here talking amongst ourselves and all of a sudden you're like, ah,
Well, because they went straight down to the ground.
You wanna do the walkie one?
That was actually cool. It was.
No, I believe you.
Who wants to? All right, I'll do the seated one.
I have goosebumps.
Yeah, no, I have.
Goosebumps.
I want to listen to you.
Okay, maybe
I'm
not.
not excited.
Yeah, I do.
I'm good.
Okay.
Are you me?
I think it's good.
Yeah, that's good.
I think. This is the scary one.
No scary for me.
So we can people yeah, got it.
I don't care, you upload a piece of paper. It's just to try to make sure that we're worried about germs, being careful. Okay.
Now it's starting to get.
Okay, so that's usually
Ah, sorry, Spirit.
however you want. No, it's sure to get it.
I'm gonna go look at the computer.
That's fine. That's the name of
Yeah. Oh my.
There is a little adjustment down here. Is it the blurry one?
I feel like I'm at the eyelashes again. No,
Okay.
that's good. Why is there?
Oh, well, it'll start. Are you looking at the cabin light door?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. We're supposed to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so if it's a little blurry, I can actually try to
Yeah,
adjust it.
I can read it.
Better?
Good work.
Okay.
This is exactly what I did at the back.
How about that?
No, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. I don't have to move, right?
Nope. Okay, so look at this, if you want the seated one, it's the built cabin strong door. So you have to actually look at the door, turn your head, here you go.
Yes, we recommend.
Okay, and to look at the ready button, strike here. Just
Oh, I
because
see. Just a little dot.
Yep. Or program manager. So this one should allow you to choose from a few different storybooks.
Huh.
I think like.
Oh, I'll be the
Circus.
goat.
Ghost? Okay.
Oh, I probably shouldn't have done that one. Oh my goodness, do you see what I'm seeing?
Can look down.
You're in a bed right now.
Yeah, I got it.
Program manager.
Do I look around the room?
Yep, you can look around.
Have you seen that?
It's scary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does she hear? Do you hear anything?
You know, should be right through.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm coming beside you.
I should not have done it. Yes. Oh,
Right over
okay.
there to the left. That'd be awesome. So both like really smooth. I'm sorry, I'm so late. Like,
Okay, Tia, I should do this.
I know.
Okay. What happened? Is it over?
Nope.
Wait! It's got like a blue grid. Is that normal?
Oh, it's not because you backed up, Ryan.
Oh, okay.
That's the worry inside. You're getting close.
Okay.
If you hear a sound,
I
you
do.
should turn your head toward
Like
it.
you know.
It means it's waiting for you to find it. This particular one, if you don't see the trigger, it will wait until you do.
So what happened?
So just keep looking around and try to find where your little ghost is.
Whoa.
I don't need to do this one.
Close the door. Can I stop now?
You can stop if you'd like, yeah. Wait. Oh, the door was.
Okay, time out.
Okay, just lift your headset up. Just lift the headset.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. All right, somebody else needs to do that because that's tricky. Did you see it on that?
You want to do it?
I did, I just got back.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I'm sorry.
Hi, Chris.
Let's
Mary. I'm your other colleague. Actually, it's nice to meet you, Dave. Back earlier. Good to meet you, Chris.
The standing trigger doesn't have the same one that we have. If you don't look at what's making all the noise, it will wait and wait. Until you can eat.
That was really good.
And I didn't know that. I found that out by accident when I had a roommate that was playing. It was like, no, I'm just not gonna look at it. And about 5 minutes passed and nothing happened. And you just hear breathing next to her. She's like, I don't wanna look at it.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
I don't wanna do that one.
I can't
Dude, what did you see?
Huh?
Was it like?
Yeah, that got me pretty
What was
sad.
in the room?
I was terrified. I had to start doing this and looking for Tron.
Yeah, I am terrified. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm getting better. Really good on the outside of the building. No, thank you. No, I'm telling you. I will think about that.
And then he like looked out the window and then switched her eyes.
Information.
The dresser drawer.
And you see information what I recommend.
Okay.
It feels very real.
Well, and you see like it's your body. So you kind of have to
Dark, yeah, it's super weird.
How tight.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
That's why I was like, no, I don't look scary.
Sometimes
I mean, yeah, it was scary.
I need to in your space. Really easily scared.
Well, I don't know, very like not too free.
I
Like,
went on that tour like 2 years ago, or no, we did it like a year ago.
Oh,
Really like, the one that you did it for like, yeah, and I'm just like, and then my brain like, recycles it.
What are you looking at? Okay,
all right.
go ahead and look at the.
Can you guys get to the door?
I know.
Press the door, everything well.
Do you want to see this?
And then, just by.
I know.
Oh, it's on to the.
Yeah, yeah. If it's seated, there's the option to go to main menu. I never saw
Then we
that.
go down and then follow them out. Yeah, yeah, I read this.
Okay, Chris. So.
No.
So there's 3 books to choose from. There's Circus, a Go Big Story, and Oriental, I think.
Like, I don't want my kids to.
So when you've selected your book, let me know.
Melody, good to see you.
I will.
Thanks for coming, Liz.
So there's a little dot that you can select.
Watch and see what.
You see the 3 books?
Story, Light as a Feather.
Oh.
Is that the same one you read?
No? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, let's take a little Toy
If you
Story
need,
guy
you can
there.
adjust the speakers so they get a little closer to your ears.
Little Toy Story guy there.
Sorry.
Oh, all right.
Well, at least you don't have to hear
Mary,
it.
why
It's
didn't you get
surround
Alan
sound.
already?
Huh?
Why didn't you get Alan already?
Oh, but that's okay. I think he went to the grocery store. So we have no food in our house right this second.
Clean it.
Is it like thundering, Chris?
What?
And lightning you hear? Like thunder. I see the lightning.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really strong surround sound, so you can get quiet. But you still get.
Go. See the doors open?
Oh, Lord.
That's why.
Mike, did you do anything?
I had a Rihanna, they were delicious. They're really good.
Yeah, you know, you can always just hold up and figure out a day. I have some things that I've actually made that you can experience as well in your education. But I do have a very narrow cats.
Is my room still there? Where do you guys usually?
Yeah, the plant
But
was
Rose is
mentioned
not
by
there.
husband.
Okay, yeah.
Somebody brought us up.
Yeah. I got it.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, it's based off of space explorations. Very. I'm still working on it. I'm very confused. And they actually
How are you doing, Chris?
Well.
Oh, that's great.
But this one you can touch the planets on one side. It'll give you 2 scales. Well, there's 2 scale and 3 scale of planets. That's not how you see it.
Oh.
And you can touch to this place and to read, and then there's an icon. So if you it reads off the information, and then you know, like play with this around. There's even video in there that you can play. Some people don't know that you can create something to actually improve the user inside of it. So there's a video player. You can
Like play the video?
yeah, so you can listen to an educational video.
That's so cool.
Oh, those are
Oh.
scissors.
Sometimes, but he's like, works 8 hours a week, no matter what his job, but then he's like, they didn't pay me, they told me they would pay me, so we're just like,
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
That's what fun.
No.
And so those people tried like CNN and stuff, but so like, they were talking about doing their
Oh.
Oh my God, that is.
oh. So horrible out here.
All right. That was awesome, Chris. All right, Mike.
Oh.
That's
Mike down.
Yeah, this is my stuff.
Mike.
Rio Grande, right?
Mike, the bottle doesn't go in recycling, right?
No.
The space officer.
When you go to Costco, that's all they have. But I guess you could buy them something.
You don't like.
No, he's too freaky, right?
We finance the deals the purchase for the sale of it.
Was it scary? Oh my God. Now you gotta learn how to get back and program that. What is that one? What is that one?
It's just the one I paid. You just
How does
have to
that work?
You want a calm experience?
I don't worry.
You don't want an experience.
I just have beginner level. What is there?
So this is oh, that's cool. Just grab that.
Oh my goodness.
Chris, your friends, there's so much about it that
I go from this and start to be really
So who's that guy I talked to today with his
Workforce solutions. And this kind of training for kids.
oh,
It's really nice. And there was a gal, dark-haired gal, and then a brown-haired guy.
no, I know.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking
So you're enjoying it?
Are you looking forward? No, this is a really nice one.
Is it totally taking you out of your comfort zone?
Yeah.
And
No,
you're
Yeah.
kidding. There's not a fighter, so I recognize.
Yeah. Your kind of talking with them about like, well, some of these games.
And what do the
like
adults do?
BIM
So
and
this one's
virtual
very-
reality.
Oh, I see.
It's
So
actually
when
like,
I work for
I
like the company,
I got it.
but that's what they're.
I got it for the family and water treatment project.
Which is one reason
So
why
it's a $20 million project. So they did a whole virtual reality, so it's like all BIM and then all virtual reality.
Ah,
You know what I mean? So at least this maybe is giving you a little push it up.
and you can turn completely up to down like you.
Oh my gosh. If you still want to go into construction, engineering, all that, well, engineering especially, are still gonna need all of the.
Can I scratch the thing with head? Oh, then the button gets up.
Yeah. You're used to what?
Technology.
Everything. Everything, yeah.
But this is a great introduction to the show of like basic technology. You know, like, it's essentially right? Or now, but not. It's just easier. And so all around and oh my gosh, I could just, yeah, I could just see how you.
Little babe. And now you have like really nice women.
Of course,
here.
No, I said, Chris, I'm your other colleague.
Yeah.
So we have a 360,
Are you ever mentors?
Linda Law, how that's actually.
Nurture and support.
But it doesn't-
And you just got opportunity to meet like the president of Blue Grande Craig.
Yeah, I do. Oh, right.
Unlike having a 3D environment where there's space, the 360 just captures what's around you. So that one you can definitely look everywhere, but you don't have to worry about oh, nice.
Yeah, I know.
National Geographic got pretty fun. Right. They're smart. This one is actually just Brandon from the night. So you can actually get